Good evening, everyone. Welcome to regular meeting of council of December 20th, it being 7 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. Council, we've got a fairly substantial agenda to deal with tonight, so call the meeting, well, I did call the meeting to order. Any amendments to the amended agenda? Not a motion to adopt, please, and seconded, and all in favor? Carried. Guess we go straight to delegation, well, sorry, to item 5.1, the new item on the amended agenda. And I guess we'll turn it over to you, Mr. Yates, and the team.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have anything to present, but if there's any questions, I'm available to answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shepherd, please.
Thank you to the chair. My question on this is we have a 5-year agreement that's coming up at the end of this month with an option to renew for 5 years. But what we have presented before us is a 2-year, a sort of new 2-year agreement, I guess it is. So that's being done on the recommendation of staff. I'm just wondering why that is. Thanks.
Who's going to take that?
Okay. Want me to go? Yeah. Thank you for the question, and through your worship. So the 2-year extension is to allow the ability to complete some of the sanitary planning that we're doing right now, and assess the opportunities that we may have that come out of that. So we would only be tied into a 2-year agreement for the treatment of the biosolids. And that would allow us to potentially do something different or change that agreement entirely, either to include more or do something else at that time. So we want a chance to finish some of this planning and some of these studies before we commit to 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Follow up, Councillor Shepherd.
So sorry to the chair. So it's just to give the district more flexibility. Is that?
Yeah, thank you. That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Since we're on that part, I'm curious, did the contractor, was he receptive to 5 years? Again, I feel awkward. I'm not sure if Ms. Lee was involved in it. So.
Yeah, I did. And thank you for the question. I did speak to our manager of wastewater about this. And so this was an agreement between Salish and the district that they were both really happy with. I believe they talked about the 5-year, but they were looking for more data. And so things like the drainage master plan and other data points that we will have over the next 2 years, we'll be able to form a, for lack of a better term, more solid agreement moving forward. But it is an extension at this point so that we can collect more data.
Okay, other questions? Because I've got a number of them, and I as staff know, and I think council, I'm concerned that we're moving forward with something that is probably not legal. I'm curious if we have checked with legal, because the agreement to extend was for 5 years, not for 2 years. So
all I can say that it is legal. It was up to 5 years. So
no, it didn't say up to 5 years for an additional 5 years.
Right. We checked and it is legal.
You checked with the lawyer.
I've discussed with the CAO. I don't know if you want to speak any further or if Dave would like to speak. Georgia Douglas.
Okay. So I will carry on, because in addition to that, the flexibility I accept, we want the flexibility, but a 5-year extension gives us that flexibility because we have a 12-month, we can cancel at any time within on those 5 years. So I find it awkward to understand why we wouldn't have the security, the certainty of a 5-year agreement.
I will just say that when I spoke to manager Christy Miller, she said that this was something that both Salish and the district agreed upon and were looking for.
Understood. And I'm saying I don't like that there's nobody else who can do this work for us. I mean, in Sechelt, on the coast, we know that. So in 2 years, we may have different requirements. But if we don't, we got a problem because we then have to negotiate a whole new agreement. So, you know, I think at the end of the day, this will come down to what council wants to do. The other one is perhaps more significant, our procurement bylaw. How is this in accordance with our procurement bylaw and the limits imposed on us? Are we following our policy?
The procurement policy, yet the agreement, which was approved by council previously, included the clause about extending the agreement.
For 5 years,
Yes, which the parties have agreed to do.
no, for 5 years. That was the agreement. Yes, Councillor Inkster.
I'll just speak quickly because I know Councillor Totha
Yeah.
also had his
Yep.
hand up. I've been looking at this, the previous discussion online, and I'm glad that it's public now. I'm comfortable with staff explanation. I'm comfortable with 2 years. I'm comfortable with the fact that both parties have agreed. That's how a contract is done. I will be supporting 2 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Councillor Inkster said everything I would have said, so I'm going to move the recommendation on page 3 as presented.
There's a seconder? Seconded. Okay. Hmm. This is a contract that, if I've got the numbers correct, are about $160,000 a year. So I want to come back to procurement. How is it that this is a new agreement? It's an extension, but we're being asked to sign a new agreement. So this would normally come to council. Please, yes.
Is this in front of council? The amendment agreement is in front of council for their approval, as per the purchasing procurement policy.
Right, but how much the contract doesn't specify trucking. So what is the agreement contemplated in the extension for the cost of trucking? No, it's okay.
If council would like, we can get that answer for you.
I mean, this is why I'm making an issue out of this, folks, and I'm speaking to council now. This is something that is come to us at the last possible meeting of the year. It was an agreement that apparently has been around since the middle of November, based on dates on documents. And frankly, I would prefer, we have a motion in front of us, but I would prefer one of two things: that we actually go with the 5 years, direct staff to proceed with 5 years, given we have the flexibility to get out in 2 or 3, or that we defer this and seek Salish's acquiescence so we can clarify all of these issues before we enter into what I think is not going to be a valid and enforceable agreement. Oh, Councillor Rowe.
I guess I'm just gonna say, in front of God and everybody, that when staff brings something like this forward, that to me, this looks more sort of operations based than anything. My expectation is that it sits within our policies and within the legal framework in which we operate as a council. So I don't have any issues with supporting this for a 2-year extension, sorry.
Okay, so you're okay with it, even though we don't know what the agreement is for trucking? That's not directed at Councillor Rowe. Sorry, folks, I tried to flag this a few days ago, but Counselor Bell, please.
Yeah, to the chair. So can you just speak a little bit more about the trucking? Just what your concern is around that?
Well, a contract would normally specify as the amounts to be paid. And in this case, there's a portion which we've been told about, which are the charges for taking the composting. But there's another part to this agreement, which is the trucking. And in the previous contract, which was 5 years ago, that was specified. So the renewal now doesn't specify trucking. So I don't know what the cost is, and I don't think our staff does. Unfortunately, at this late date, given we don't have another meeting before the contract expires, we have to take that on good faith if we're voting for it. Counselor.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not sure how much longer we're going to discuss this, but I've seen the information provided to council. Glad we're discussing it once again, as I've said. I think staff has presented a valid argument and I trust staff. Thanks.
Okay, that's a very different comment to what I've just said. I don't want it to imply that I'm implying any lack of trust. I am doing what I believe is our duty to make sure we are following our policies. And that we don't have, and I'm identifying that I certainly feel we don't have the information we need. Please.
Yeah, the implication and your assumption of implication was yours. I'm telling you why I'm supporting it. Thanks.
Okay, anything else? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? I'm opposed. Motion carries. Okay, item 5.2, which is on page 14 in the old agenda, or 85, I guess, in the new agenda. All right. 74, beg your pardon. Right. Mr. Pearson.
Thanks, your worship. So this report is in front of you today to seek a resolution from yourselves to authorize a grant application for the Complete Communities program. The grant monies are with the province of BC, and a grant is administered by the Union of BC Municipalities. The deadline for this last round for this grant is January 12th next year, approximately 3-4 weeks away from now. We do need a resolution in order to make the application, and the recommendation spells out what we need from you. The report supplies some background information on the grant program, what the intent is if we do secure the funds and successful with the grant. And it is planning related. And there's really 4 components of the grant related to housing, transportation, infrastructure, and daily community needs. And we feel that although we cannot directly tie grant money to an OCP review, we could be eligible for technical studies that could definitely tie into the OCP review. So securing $150,000 would be fantastic for the OCP review. One of the requirements too is that we secure support from the First Nations, and Director Allen has been in conversation with Shashal. So if you have any questions, I'm here.
Great, thank you. Councilor Inkster.
Thank you. Mr. Pearson had me at grant and planning. I will move the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Seconded. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Thanks for all the work. Council, we then go to 5.3, page 85. Yes, and Mr. Douglas, are you going to speak to this?
Yes, your worship. As part of our long-term borrowing for the operations center that was recently completed, we must pass a security issuing resolution that we forward to the regional district with a number of other documents. The regional district will then do their process with the board. And we hope that's all done. We're expecting that all be done and with the intent to borrow long-term by March, April of 2024. So we're just asking for the resolution.
Very good, thank you. Questions, council?
Sure.
Please, Councillor Inkster.
Thank you. This appears, and it could be corrected by the finance officer, if in fact this is a long-term borrowing, that's what I am determining here. I'm wondering if, and this is always you could be caught, but I'm wondering if we've considered looking at short-term, considering the fact that interest rates may go back down in the new year, considering that the rise in interest rates was a direct reaction to the inflation caused by too much money supply. So that's just a lot of economics, but I'm just assuming that inflation is under control, that interest rates are assuming to go down in the new year. Would that then be something that we could look at in terms of borrowing and then look at a longer term once interest rates go down? Thanks.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, that's I guess the normal process of borrowing for long-term would be your project finishes, you reconcile your total, you borrow all the short-term you need, basically your construction loan. And once that's all completed, then you keep moving forward with the long-term. Would the MFA allow us to keep the short-term until November next year? That's something that I would have to look into. But, usually, it's the process, you go through the process. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. So I think that the role of the finance people at the District of Sechelt is to create a system of predictability and a number of payments that are the same over a number of years. But I would ask that we encourage and or consider looking at that short-term piece, as has been indicated, in case interest rates go down. I think it's going to go down 1 to 2%. It's just I'm not a necessarily prognosticator that accurately, but that's just my theory.
So invite investment advice from the District Sechelt Council. Yeah. Okay. I think that's, I commend you, Councillor Inkster, for the insight, and we've got time to make that final decision. So today, I think it's before us to seek the special number from the SCRD is essentially what this is about. Did the alternative approval process specify 20 years? So that's why we're going with 20 years.
Yes.
Yeah. Could we, under the rules of AAP, could we go, I guess we're stuck with 20. We can't do 19 or 21 or anything else.
No, they come in groups of 10, 20,
In
25.
bands, I guess, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I think the approval process was for a period of up to 20 years.
That's what I was
But
asking.
the question that I had was, I know it's, not even the end of 2023 yet, but do we have any indications on what the interest rates might look like for the spring issuance? And does MFA provide opportunity to refinance down the road if the rates are better at a later date?
Yes, after 10 years, you can it's an automatic refinance at 10 years.
Which could be either good or bad.
That's correct.
And maybe for the new members of council and some of us old ones that don't remember, the SCRD, do you want to explain to us The SCRD is the central borrowing agency, but
Yeah, they kind of are the umbrella organization that actually holds the liability. So if we defaulted for some reason, which would mean that we're collapsing, then they would have to pick up the debt. But that's never happened as far as I know, ever. So it's just another layer of security. Is why we get such a good rate with borrowing, is there's levels of security built in that, you know, makes it impossible for the debt not to get paid back.
I've always found it ironic that they ask the regional district under the local MFA regulations, as opposed to coming direct to a municipality. So be it. Councillor Inkster.
Yeah, I think that that's because there's a number of smaller communities within regional districts. It'd be interesting to see what Metro Vancouver does in terms of their borrowing. And I can tell you that when it comes to the regional district, I'll be supporting the borrowing. I'm not sure about
Yeah.
Councillor Toth. But that's what I'll be doing. Thanks.
Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I'm not gonna, give away how I might vote when it comes to the regional district, but the question I think got missed on whether we have any inclination on what the spring issuance rates might be yet. On what our interest rates are actually gonna look like. Thanks.
Sorry, was that a question or you? Yes.
I don't yet, no.
Okay, council, so I don't think I got a motion, but I'll move the recommendation on page.
80, well, mine says 85.
Yep, 85. Councillor Rowe, seconded Councillor Toth. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, that brings us to item 6.1 on council procedure amendment bylaw. Council. How are we handling this? You want to add anything, corporate officer?
No, your worship, I'm happy to answer any questions or provide an overview of the changes that are being proposed. As per the community charter, section 124, any amendments to the procedure bylaw must come forward and be endorsed by council resolution. Or sorry, 3 readings and adoption.
Right. Great. Okay, any comments or questions, council? Councillor Toth.
Thank you. One of the changes that was made was with reference to amended agendas requiring unanimous vote of council, being changed to a majority. However, in section 30, subsection 2 on page 107, bylaws, bylaw that is not on the published agenda may be introduced at a council meeting with unanimous consent of council. And I don't know if it got missed or if it's something that we want to look at changing, but I would think that something like a 2/3 majority should be sufficient. But it's just my own thoughts, not ready to throw it on the floor just yet.
But are you saying it's inconsistent as well?
Well, I think it's inconsistent in that, we only require a majority for an amended agenda. But bylaws, if we want to bring a bylaw forward that wasn't on the original agenda, that still needs to be unanimous consent. And like I said, I would like to see it changed to something like a 2/3 majority. I'm happy to make that motion, but I just wanted to know how the rest of council felt before I tried it.
Anything, council? Councillor Inkster, sorry.
At this point, I'm comfortable with unanimity on a bylaw introduction and change because it's a bylaw and it could be supported by a number of council members, but I think bylaws need to be given a little bit longer consideration than sprung on council at a council meeting and then not have unanimity to go down that road. I think it should come through a process. Thanks.
Okay, so you're saying you're okay essentially with the way it's drafted? That there's two, something else not bylaw can be introduced subject to a majority? And the bylaws have to be unanimous. Councillor Shepherd.
I'm sorry to the chair. I'm comfortable with the logic that Councillor Toth has mentioned in terms of making that amendment. Because I think if there's a fear that bylaw is going to be sprung on council with just a majority vote, it still allows for debate of the proposed bylaw. So I don't see why if we're just to make the changes flow, I'm happy with that amendment to that page 107. Thanks.
And since I'm dealing with the old one, 107 is 34, page 34. What section? Thank you. So then are you suggesting for this discussion, it's that we would change 30 sub 2 to read 2/3 and leave the earlier one as a majority?
Yes, that was what I was indicating, would simply be to change unanimous to 2/3 majority. Which I think
Okay.
does continue to give additional weighting to bylaws that are coming last minute. More of council needs to be comfortable with them coming forward.
Bylaws,
Than
yes.
than just a
Yeah.
basic
No,
majority.
I'm just for figuring out how we proceed here. So that's the soft proposal at the moment. Okay, park that one for a moment then. That's pretty, yes, Councillor Inkster.
Is that what I'm hearing? 5 out of 7, 5 out of 7 in both those
No,
cases, introduction and then passing? Is that what I heard?
No, I think 30 sub 2 would change from unanimous to 2/3, which is 5 out of 7.
Yeah. Introduction. Okay. If that's, I thought there was an additional piece spoken to that. I'll continue to not support it and I'll explain why. In reference to Councillor Shepherd's comment, if you get a majority of council, the 5-7 that introduces it, that allows it to be on the table, then the assumption is that it'll be passed with at least a majority and our 5 out of 7 because they allowed its introduction, assuming that there will be a change. So that's the road we're going down. So that's why I won't be supporting it. Thanks.
Can I back away just from this for a minute and check the number of changes in here that I want to be understand the process that we followed? Where did these, I mean, this is not a change ironically, but some of the others, what precedents or what other references have staff used to make sure we're on the right track?
If I
Corporate
may,
officer, please.
Your Worship, are you referring to all of the changes as
Yeah,
a collective group?
I mean, the question is more of a broad base that there's been a number of different amendments and changes and stuff, and I'm wondering what the basis was.
Certainly. Many of the changes are purely procedural and housekeeping items that came from our new online electronic agendas and minutes system. And they've resulted in some changes with the way we will be doing some of our webcasting going forward as well. The online portion of it, the audiovisual portion won't result in procedure bylaw changes, but there's certainly some just general procedural changes in there. We also reviewed several other procedure bylaws from other municipalities, just as a general overview to see what other people are doing, best practices. There's a lot of materials offered by the LGMA, the Local Government Management Association, that recommends doing things a certain way versus others. And then the other item was, sorry, I think my report outlines it a little bit better. Some other changes that have been requested procedurally just through this council, being a little bit more flexible about the order of the agenda. Doesn't necessarily need to be in a set order as long as the items that we've outlined in the bylaw are included on every agenda.
Thank you. Okay, anything? You want to deal with that one first?
I'll make okay. First, I will point out that it's a 5-7 majority vote if all of council's present. If it's only 6 members of council present, it's 4. But yeah, hence the 2/3 majority. So I'd like to make a motion to amend section 30 subsection 2 to change unanimous to 2/3 majority.
Seconder? Seconded. Okay. Okay, any further discussion? Yeah, I think I'm with Councillor Inkster on this one, so all in favor? 1, 2, 3, okay. Opposed? Motion is defeated. So another motion or we'll carry on? I had perhaps it's procedural, but item section 15(3) should be at the top of page 10 of the actual report. References submissions to be included in the agenda must be provided to the corporate officer not 9 days ahead. By removing counselors in the public, that implies that staff also have to get their reports in, which I know will please the corporate officer immensely.
That's correct, your worship. That is actually a standing operating procedure that we have. It's now included in the bylaw to give it a little bit more teeth.
The rest of you watching, you're listening? Very good. And then section 21. Section 21 references, subparagraph 1. I'm curious how you see this working, that any member of council can call the question, which seems to go against, and therefore it triggers a vote immediately. That is in contradiction with the usual duties of the presiding member to decide when there's been enough discussion.
It's actually written into the Roberts Rules of Order.
Mhm.
I unfortunately don't have my book here to cite the exact section. However, I believe it's generally understood that the chair of the meeting will provide guidance to the assembly, the members of council in an assembly of this nature, to allow for enough discussion to take place. There is always the option, though, for any member of that assembly to, it's almost like calling a point of order, and then it triggers a vote.
It triggers a vote on the point of order, but not on the actual. So this to me seemed to be more than essentially unhelpful to, one person, I suppose. How does it work? If we have a motion, one person, 2 people don't like it, they demand an immediate vote. So we vote down. Does council follow? I'm not sure. I'm not sure we need it, but why raise it? So I'll leave that hanging. Councillor Toth?
Thank you. Yeah, it's one that I struggle with how we're going to operationalize as well. Just thinking back over the last year, I know some of our debates have ended up, or some of our discussion has ended up with some very repetitive points being made over and over. And I think this would give, actually, I think Councillor Shepherd a couple of meetings ago raised it as a point of order to call the question. So I think that was a very effective means of, we've heard you, it's time to move on in the meeting now.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
That, and by calling the point of order, I think that was significant. Then from there, we went to the motion. It's Paulson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just had to check my notes here, but the way it would work is a seconder is required, and then the motion would have to pass with a 2/3 vote.
That's not in this. That's great. So that's like more of a point of order. It's not, but
That's the intention of the addition to the procedure bylaw. We can certainly provide some clarification. And it's also just reinforcing an element of Robert's rules, which is included in the procedure bylaw as well, covering any gaps that aren't in the procedure bylaw or the community charter.
Councillor Rowe. please.
So just for clarity, if Alton said, if he wanted to call the question, I seconded it, then we would vote as a council on whether we're going to call the question or not, or.
No,
goes-
it
okay,
calls a vote on the motion that's on the floor.
Okay,
But where does the 2/3 come in?
That motion would then have to pass with 2/3.
No, but that's.
So we.
Through
so-
the chair,
Yes,
no,
please, yeah.
I'm confused.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Well, yeah, go.
So
please.
as somebody, I'm still learning, I need to understand this better. So can you kind of, I don't know, walk me through this a bit? again?
I'll walk you through by way of a question. So if, for argument's sake, somebody calls the question, calls for a vote and it's seconded. And I guess administratively, I go, I think we need more debate, but I don't have that right according to this. But that obliges us then to have a 2/3 vote just because I think we haven't had enough debate. And we can't then, if it's defeated, we can't vote on the same thing again in that meeting, the same motion. So by calling it too soon, or me saying, oh, no, I think we should talk some more, I'm actually able to trigger a requirement for a 75%, 2/3 vote. Yeah, please.
it raises the threshold for a motion to pass
Well,
by
or,
requiring a 2/3.
or it gives the presiding member the opportunity to say, no, I don't actually like the way this is going, so I'm gonna say we need more debate, but you won't let me, therefore we need 2/3 vote. Please. I'm struggling here myself.
Or we would all just sit here and stare at you. But
Well-
I'm reading here that it's, a 2/3 vote is required for any motion that deprives a member of rights in any way. Which is why it's a 2/3 thing with the cutting off of debate. That's just a foundational in Robert's Rules of Order.
Yes, it is.
So, which, I suppose technically our procedure bylaw doesn't have to require us to follow Robert's rules on everything. Is that correct?
We don't have to, but I mean, we should. I don't see the benefit of this. This to me is adding complexity. I'd rather not have a fight on the procedures going forward. So I'd certainly be in favor of striking that piece, last sentence of 21, subparagraph 1. Touche. You're up, please.
Yeah, I don't know what procedure we would go moving forward based on the recommendations made by staff in order to change that. But I think that the threshold is the determining factor in this case from 4 to 5. And in most cases, council members would be calling the vote on other council members. I think it would be rare that we'd be calling it on the chair based on the understanding of the chair's role and position, which is to direct the meeting and manage the meeting. So we would generally be calling this on one another.
The irony is I think it actually puts a fair bit of power in the hands of the presiding member. If I understand it correctly. Just on a whim, I think, hey, you know what, the best way, like, you guys call the question, you want to vote? I say, well, I don't think that's right. All of a sudden it trips from a majority to 2/3. I don't think that's the intent of this, but what I'm hearing is that's how it would be administered.
Well, yeah, that's the threshold changes and that's how it would be. That's how it'd be administered, but it would be on, most likely on other council members. So there's that issue there that we wouldn't necessarily. I don't think that we would want to go down the road where we were playing, going to and fro with this particular thing. So, Counselor Toth calls the question on me. And I could then call the question on him. I don't think that's the road we want to go down. So there's some understandings, I think, within the proposal that doesn't happen. Based on
Counselor
the
Shepherd,
teamwork.
save us.
I'm happy to move the recommendations 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on pages 87 and 88 with, however, the deletion or the amendment by deleting clause 21.1.
No, the
Or
last sentence.
the
last
suggested
sentence.
amendment. Correct.
Okay. Take it out. Yeah, so your motion, Councilor Shepherd, would be to remove that sentence from 21.1. And then we get to eventually go to.
Certainly, that's
Deal with
I'm
that.
proposing that we
Okay.
amend.
Is there a seconder? No. Okay. Okay, any other so this is a motion only to remove that sentence. All in favor? Opposed, Councilors Toth and Inkster opposed. Motion carries. Okay, other things, different topics, folks. I will ask or seek clarification. Section 26, notice of motion. References any counselor can bring a notice of motion. So that means the mayor cannot. Section 26, subparagraph 1. 106, thanks. Subparagraph 1. Okay. You were there? Okay. Please, Ms. Paulson.
I believe you're correct, Your Worship. It should be phrased, any member of council.
Okay. Seconded. All in favor? Okay. Something that I didn't think of until I was reading this in the last couple of days, but I know other jurisdictions have gone to a method of consolidating the 3 readings, so we don't have to go through, first reading, all in favor, second reading, all in favor. This would be a time to insert that. So, probably not. So, yeah. So I don't know how you don't have, I didn't give you a heads up. Do you have wording to that effect or?
We can certainly amend the amendment bylaw to include that as a new clause in the procedure bylaw 568.
So to avoid going through 3 readings and so on, again, would you want to do that before we give first reading for this?
It can certainly be done at any point prior to third reading, I believe. So doing it now would probably be the most efficient.
Right. Which would mean we should be deferring this till the next meeting and get it all done.
Council could certainly make a motion now to amend the amendment bylaw to include the provision to allow for 3 readings to be completed with 1 vote.
Right.
We currently have 2 amendments for the bylaw. We would just be adding a third and then giving potentially council has the option to give 3 readings to the bylaw as amended. As soon as the resolutions to amend the bylaw are made, they are in force in that bylaw, even though you don't have a new document in writing in front of you. But then we could proceed with the readings as amended.
Counselor Todd.
Thank you. I'm not sure how the town of Gibson's does it, and I meant to check with Mayor White before we had this conversation. It was something I flagged because the regional district recently changed their procedure bylaw to allow for all 3 readings to be given with a single resolution with unanimous consent. So if you
Right, yeah. But that's.
practically, the way the meeting works out though is that you would, as chair, you would simply ask, does anybody object to giving 3 readings with a single motion? And if nobody objects, then you would proceed calling first, second, and third reading of bylaw X. I think it's a good time-saving measure for sure. We put it into practice just last week, so I'd be in favor of trying to come up with, find some wording to that effect. I don't know if
So getting
Yeah.
to what Councillor Shepherd wants to do, which is move the recommendations. Perhaps we could do that, give a general, what you've just said, Councillor Toth, a general guidance to staff to include that. And then we won't give any readings to the bylaw tonight, so that what we see January 10th or whenever our next meeting is, we do the 3 readings then with a clean document.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, basically.
But then we'll have to do another 3 readings later is all. Yep, we could. Yeah. Well, my concern with that is we don't have the exact wording for the consolidating the 3 readings. So I don't know that we could actually give bylaw readings. If we pass this, through me to you.
Council is certainly welcome to give any number of readings, well, up to 3, to the bylaw tonight. However, we've already received motions for 2 amendments, and those will be included next time this bylaw comes forward. So whether that's adoption on January 17th or whether it's for second reading on January 17th. In the meantime, we will also be doing the public notification. That is a statutory requirement that allows members of the public to submit their input as well. So prior to adoption, that will need to be considered as well.
Councillor Toth.
Thank you. If we give it first reading tonight, as amended, with everything that we've done up to this point, when we meet again in January, can we give it, amendments before giving it second reading, then proceed with third reading and adoption at that meeting as well?
Go ahead, please.
Almost. We would still need a free and clear day between third reading and adoption.
And we need time somewhere in this process for to give the public time to respond or to provide comments.
That's correct. The public notification, if the bylaw receives any readings at all tonight, that will start over the winter break and finish in early January. Then as long as there are no major amendments to the bylaw and the main intent of the bylaw has not changed at all, we can proceed with adoption without an additional notification period. If there are any significant changes, however, I would strongly recommend another public notification period, which is approximately 10 days and 2 notices in the paper.
Thank you.
As has been mentioned by the mayor, is the proposal what would be considered a significant change? Because if it is not, then we would just proceed with 3 readings.
I'm sorry, I'd have to get back to you with some examples of significant changes. I haven't come across many of those yet in my research to date.
I think, to me, listen, we're talking about a few weeks on a procedural matter. I'd rather get it right than have to back up and run more ads and stuff. So, and to me, the significant, maybe it isn't ultimately significant, but changing, if we're gonna go with the 3 readings consolidated, I think that's quite different, though. It's not in this document, is my point. So in that itself would to me be new information, so. So, not sure is he, Counselor Toth is okay? Do we? That's okay, Brenda. You- Good. So, Counselor Shepherd, have you got a?
No, I mean, you know, my feeling is that we should go ahead and vote on what's before us with the amendments that have been agreed to, but if it's the will of overall council to wait until we have the amended, the final clause, then I'm fine with that as well. Thank you.
Okay. Well, then I would like, we need a motion, first of all, on the consolidation, not the wording, but the directing staff to add that. So somebody want to make that motion? Sir Shepherd?
I'm happy to make that
Yeah,
motion
yeah.
that we add wording to this expediting the consolidating 3 readings.
Is that okay? Does that work for you, corporate officer? Okay, is there a seconder? Seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Oh, carried. Okay, so what do you want to do now, council? And my encouragement would be let's let our team go to work with these changes and give us a clean copy, which we look at on our next council meeting, with the goal of giving 3 readings, then going to public for 10 days-ish. So, yeah, and then we adopt it as soon as possible after that. In which case, we don't, yes, please.
Sorry, Windsor, we don't have a meeting on January 3rd, is that right?
That is correct.
So our first actual council is 17th?
Well, and we have a committee of the whole and a potentially a regular council to close, but yes, I think you're right, the 17th. Frankly, to give our staff time to put this together after Christmas. Please.
See if I can try this. But having moved these amendments now, we all understand what these amendments are. Is there anything that actually prevents us from giving 3 readings tonight as amended?
We're giving readings for a bylaw that we don't have the wording for.
Is that, excuse me, is that your ruling as a presiding member / corporate officer, or is that the actual case?
Well, if I'm giving, if I'm voting on a bylaw, I want to know the specifics of the bylaw. So that's my view. Please, Counselor.
Could I just clarify procedure at this point? So, just to ask if this has been introduced first and seconded as a motion? Has it been? Just to
No,
clarify?
well,
Yeah.
no, nothing's, we're at the stage of, are we going to give readings to the bylaw.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So, so it hasn't been introduced by anyone to move the readings?
That's
amended?
correct, because we don't have
Okay, well, I'll move the readings. I'll move it then.
the first reading.
Yeah, first reading, yeah.
Okay, and to be clear, what is the bylaw? What is in the bylaw?
Well, the corporate officer would tell us now what's in the bylaw based on the changes we've made. Yeah. And the corporate officer's nodding.
So please go ahead.
Certainly, your worship, my understanding of what the motion the counselor was moving was first reading as amended to include the following amendments, which are the removal of clause 21 with the calling the question, a change to clause 26 to replace counselors with any member of council for subsections 1 and 2, and then adding the ability to consolidate 3 readings for a bylaw with 1 resolution.
The latter is not, I'd like to know what that, where would you insert it in the bylaw? You know, don't we need that?
I can certainly take a moment and find the exact location, but it would be in the bylaws section.
No, not the bylaws. Counselor Shepherd. Okay, so you're all, or some of you at least are comfortable voting on something where we don't have the wording. We may have some wording, but. Counselor Rowe? No?
Well, I may not have the exact words. You're correct, but I think the amendments are not complicated or complex. And this is for first reading. So I don't actually have
Okay.
issues with it.
Okay, thank you. Your microphone's on, Counselor. Okay, No, well, this is a motion for first reading, which is what, or we're looking, if you have given a motion for first reading, it's been seconded. Okay. And the first reading, the bylaw, because remember, in the old days, we used to read out everything in the bylaw. So, the wording for what we're proposing, I accept it may be somewhat, what's the word? Generally accepted, but we don't normally approve bylaws without the specific wording, so. But I'm at the council's decision. I don't feel comfortable supporting it. I'm comfortable with the overall thing. I'd just like to see us do it, get it right and do it in January. So with that being said, I'll call the question on first reading. All in favor? Sorry. Okay. Okay. No, not you. Thank you. I'm opposed. Thank you. Motion carries. Okay. Anything else, folks? Okay. If not, please.
Well, the order paper says 3 readings, so we're not, well, if no other council member, I will do second reading.
Okay. Any discussion? Want to repeat myself, so I won't. All in favor? Opposed? No. Mayor Henderson opposed, motion carries. Can I, a point of clarity, so if we, whatever we do now, there will need to be public notification. We're gonna give 10 days over Christmas?
The plan was to run the ads December 29th and January 5th. And that allows an additional week for people to respond to that advertisement prior to the January 17th agenda being distributed.
So be providing notice during a period during the holiday, essentially. Okay. What's council's will?
Okay, I'm introducing third. It's on the order paper. It's the intent of council to proceed. I'll introduce third then.
All in favor? I'm opposed. Motion carries. Okay. We go to item 6.2. Oh, sorry. No, I don't think we did that right, did we? We do all the different bits? Kidding. Oh, no, I'm kidding. Yeah. I think that's what we were doing. Yeah. Okay, very good. All right, we move on to item 6.2. And this is on page 115. And anything you want to offer us, Mr. Yates or Ms. Roberts?
Nothing at this time.
Council, you got any questions? Please.
I guess it's been on a lot tonight. I actually went the other way. I'm looking forward to this triggering some film production in Seashelt. I know that Hallmark is coming to Gibson's in January again. Family wholesome movie, so it'd be great to see something like that in Seashelt. So it's good to see this. Thanks.
Great. Any other questions? Councillor Shepherd.
Just a quick question through the chair. I wonder if our rates, I saw the comparison chart that staff went to quite a few different municipalities or cities. Is there any specific municipality that the rates are modeled on? Thank you.
Like you read my notes. Please.
I will turn this question over to Ms. Paulson as she was prepped from our community safety coordinator on this. Thank you.
Okay. Please.
Thank you. I'd have to pull up the chart to remind myself exactly which municipalities were on there. However, the most similar size municipalities were considered with the fee schedule that was produced. And if you'll give me a moment, I'd be happy to pull that up and identify exactly which municipality.
Yeah, put that microphone. Yeah.
While that's being done, just a follow-up question, how do they compare to Gibson's rates?
Yeah. Yeah. I did flag this for staff a day or two ago, so hopefully it's not too much of a burden.
The chart attached to the report lists a number of municipalities. I can read off a few if it helps.
Well, no, I think the question is which municipalities were the basis?
Well, I think this
the
comparison
recommendations.
chart was what was used.
Some of them reference updated in not updated or to be updated in 2020. So
Yeah, I think she just went off this. I believe she just went off this.
So are we more expensive or less expensive than Gibson's, for example? Like, there's a logic to this. I don't really need I'd like to see us be, comparable to Gibson's presumably, but, are we more value than Squamish or, so I don't think it's, And it's not that we're gonna make a lot of money, but I certainly wouldn't be in favor of us being the most expensive in BC. And I guess that's what you're gonna assure us that we're not the most expensive in BC.
Yeah, I'm good with what's proposed. I think that it's important that we put it out there, although we did talk about a number of years ago that we would like to host these movies. I know that some may say you don't make a lot of money, but the accommodation of the personnel that work in the movies, which could be in the hundreds, and the actors that come from town to be in it, and the catering that's every day, and the local supplies that they have to buy for the catering is huge. So I'm really supportive of something that moves forward expeditiously so that we can put it out there that we're willing to support similar movies that are happening in neighboring jurisdictions.
Thank you. Well said. Okay, yes, please. Ms. Polson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So there are a variety of different types of fees as noted on the fee schedule. So the comparisons are not exactly a percentage based on a different municipality. For example, Squamish charges a lower daily rate or a lower application rate for some of their application fees versus a potentially higher rate for some of the other services they provide. Our rates are designed to be in line with Gibson's. They're not identical, but I don't have Gibson's rate beside me to identify exactly which, if the application fee is identical or higher or lower. Likewise, there's different types of location rental services that would be provided, and the locations in each municipality are different. So the size of the park, the amenities that are available at the park would definitely influence some of the rates that are suggested. In general, we are lower than municipalities of a larger size, such as Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge, Port Moody, and Coquitlam, definitely lower than City of Vancouver, which has some of the highest rates noted on the chart here. So it's intended to be middle of the road for a small to medium-sized municipality.
Thank you for that. Councillor Shepherd.
That's great. Thank you for providing the background. I'll move the recommendations 1 and 2 on page 115.
Thank you. And so I see seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Then I think if we're on track, we need to do the bylaw, which is on page 129. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yes. You're giving first reading?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor of first?
Was it second?
Second reading? All in favor? And third reading? Seconded. All in favor? Third reading. Okay, thank you. Okay, we go to item 6.3. And Mr. Hall has been patiently waiting. Mr. Hall, yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we have before you a report that deals with 2 rezoning applications from the same landowner, both in a similar area. They one on the east side of the Trellis Silverstone facility and the one on the west side of the same facility. You also have an OCP amendment in addition to the zoning amendment bylaws, and a large part of the OCP amendment would be intended to grapple with the larger area planning that's sort of connected to both applications in terms of addressing not just site-specific issues, but larger road and servicing network issues for development of these 2 properties as a whole moving forward. There's also some minor land use designation cleanup as part of the OCP amendment. When we did the Trellis rezoning application, the zoning piece and the OCP designation changes were done prior to the surveyed parcel being created. So the map we have currently the designation is slightly larger than the actual surveyed boundary of the property, so there's some cleanup there of shrinking the civic designation to match the now surveyed boundaries and the attendant change to the multifamily designation. Similarly, with some of the park designations, expanding those to match the Quarry Park surveyed boundaries that were done a while ago, but after the OCP had originally brought in a park designation. So there's a few little pieces there, but a larger piece is the area planning need. So the report describes a number of issues, both, related to each application specifically, as well as seeking some endorsement from council on terms of these larger issues moving forward in terms of identifying this larger road network servicing and sort of bringing together other related issues like park dedications. This is one of those issues where at a subdivision level, there's a requirement for 5% of the land, and that gets taken once. But at the rezoning stage, we also have an opportunity to seek additional parkland dedication, and this is where, this area proposes a substantial amount of new development over time. And obviously through our previous parks master planning exercise and just looking at it now, this is the time to start thinking about those future park needs. There's obviously a lot of different types of parks, different sizes. And certainly there's been identified needs through talking with our own staff in terms of having the opportunities to secure a larger piece of land that would be able to host a variety of uses over time, rather than a whole bunch of smaller pieces, even though there'd still be a need for smaller park areas, playgrounds, et cetera. But this is a piece that needs to be grappled with too, so we can start to secure, size and location of lands as we move forward as part of this planning exercise. So, if council has any more questions, I'm
Okay. Worked. I learned something. Turn off your microphone from here. Okay, council, lots in here. Who wants to go first? Councilor Inkster.
No, thank you. I hope council was able to, although that member's not here, to take a look at Councilor McLaughlin's ideas. They're fairly consistent with some earlier statements she's made. The questions I have about this one is that I'm looking at the layout of the properties. So just through to you, because I do have a couple of questions through the planning staff. The homes will face inward. Is that what the proposal is based on the internal street network? Just a quick question through you to Mr. Hall.
You mean in which section when you're?
Well, generally it's a large development with internal roadways. So I'm assuming is the facing of the houses inward then, or is it outward and inward?
Certainly for the townhouse development on Derby Road, it would be, there would be internal facing. Obviously, there's the internal access road. The units fronting Derby Road would obviously have, windows and views out south. But yeah, certainly in terms of access, all the internal roads are coming in off, like there's a singular access off of Derby, providing smaller internal roads for all the units in the townhouse section. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, well, it's all over, right? There's several different components to this. So facing inward, none will face granite, perhaps. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, probably for the granite application. Again, there's more of an internal looping road network. Yeah, none of the units, at least under the current proposal, would be that close to, fronting granite. The applicants have talked about putting landscaping along that side, so that it looks like they're having a greater setback on the granite side for that development versus Oracle or Derby.
Where over on Derby is different, as you described. Thank you. Yeah, I'll go to Councillor Toth and Councillor Bell and then back to you.
Thank you. I'm looking at the diagrams on page 140 and 141 of our agenda. 140 shows the townhouses, and then 141 shows the cluster housing. It looks like a majority of the cluster housing is duplexes, but not all of it. I'm just looking for confirmation that this is the intention. Is this sort of the final layout that we're going to be seeing going forward through this process? I've said before, you know, we need to be looking at not stamping down single family homes anymore. And I see single family homes in this drawing, so
Sorry, you said stamping down, you don't mean stamping out your references.
building
Building, right.
better density.
Yes.
Single family homes are not good density. at all.
Can I suggest maybe this is a time for Mr. Hall or Mr. Allen? I mean, to me, this is a wonderful opportunity with the Housing Accelerator Fund and the potential announcements and support coming for housing, you know, to get a large tract of land like this with a well-known developer and recognizing the province's goal of pushing for housing. You know, are we being bold enough? And like, I see this as a real win for everybody if we get it right. So please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think you'll note the R6 zone that is attached in the bylaw that has been drafted by Mr. Hall provides more density than shown on the site plan here. And that's a really interesting thing about Housing Accelerator Fund, as well as the small scale multi-unit housing that the province is requiring. And this will be on the leading edge of that. What do we do when the applicant provides less than what's expected by the province and by the federal government? So here's a site plan to depict the potential layout, showing duplexes, noting that the zoning that we're drafting will allow much more than what is shown here. But noting again, introductory for first reading, the concept is there'll be internal roads, there'll be a multi-use path through it, there'll be small dwellings, clustered dwellings, duplexes at minimum, possibly more. And we can continue to work with the applicants to find the best fit, and we'll be reporting back in a lot more detail at second reading, whenever that might be.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. It's going to be quite interesting because it could be mandated that potentially that we can't allow a particular zoning. You got to speak or the.
Right, sorry. Right, if the applicants were to come forward with the R1 zone, it simply wouldn't be good enough because we would have to go around and change that zone by June of this year. So we've discussed this with the landowners. There's no point us going in a certain direction only to change it basically as their proposal is ready for adoption. So we're still making those puzzle pieces fit, but we wanted to show council what we are looking at here with these two separate applications on the larger piece of land. And as Mr. Hall has discussed, the greater planning piece about road networks and parks and so forth, and starting to put the pieces together for you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now, so the Councillor Bell, please.
Through the chair, my question was similar to Councillor Toth around density. Just my understanding about cluster homes is that they generally are like four homes within sort of the model. Is there a number of models for cluster homes? I was curious about them. I don't know that much about them. It's just to the planning department. I'm curious about.
How do you define cluster homes,
Yeah.
Mr. Hall?
Sure. I mean, I guess part of the cluster home terminology is just coming from the applicant, and they're proposing smaller homes more closely located together. So it's, in that sense, it's from their perspective, it's just they're clustering smaller homes more closely together. In terms of the provincial regulations and the small scale multi-unit housing approach, when the province is saying, okay, local governments need to zone certain properties for up to 4 units, they provided in a manual what those 4 units could look like in terms of a range of configurations, from a very basic, single family home with a suite in it, plus 2 small accessory dwelling units, to a duplex with suites, to a quadplex, to a cottage court with 4 units. So that there's, I think the manual describes, 6 or 8 or 10 different configurations that, you could come up with that have 4 dwelling units in it. So the intent provincially is to say, local governments need to zone for this potential to allow for these different housing forms. But it's not yet clear, as Director Allen said, what happens when, a developer comes in and says, well, I'm not gonna do 4 units, I only want to do 2 units. But we have to zone for that. So when we're dealing with this application or others, we're sort of in this transitional period of grappling with. These changes are coming fairly soon next year. So there's no point just zoning for what an applicant wants to do now without factoring in what the province will require us to do in the next 6 months.
Excellent. Thank you.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Counselor Ister.
When I look at the proposals, I'm, I asked the question about where the lots are entering the roadways. I've not seen too many with the backs to the existing large road. So that's interesting. I'm glad that the numbers of houses that are contained therein are accessing one of our more recently built larger road systems. Although much of this traffic, we have to keep in mind will pass the high school unless they go the
Right,
other way.
right.
Right?
That's on my list. So
Yeah.
please carry
Yeah,
on.
unless they go the other way, which isn't economical unless you convince them all to buy electrics. So that's an interesting piece that I just wanted to mention. The other thing I wanted to ask is the park, the two things, behind the existing institution, is that land not, the government has not optioned any land around that, as far as we know?
Government has not optioned.
The health ministry, let's say they've not
Oh.
accessed, no? Around the existing care facility, it just says there's a change. It doesn't say who owns it. I'm just wondering.
I mean, the
Institutional.
Trellis-
No, I don't think we can answer that. Can we?
Yeah, I mean, the parcel upon which the Trellis facility is built is owned
Of course.
by new owners, but the remaining land surrounding all of that is still owned by the original landholder.
Okay, so it could be sold off to maybe institutional potentially because of what's already there and connected. I'm just hopeful I think the facility is underbuilt. That's another issue. But I would be love to see some land options. So I'm just gonna throw that out there. The park proposal, the park that was listed there, the little kind of, it's very squiggly, the park. It'd be interesting. I'm assuming, is that mostly rock? The park proposal that's there, is that mostly on rock?
Which part?
Well, there's a park proposal on the map that's on an additional piece. Yeah. Is that mostly on rock?
Well, okay, at this point, yeah, Mr. Allen?
Yes, thank you, your worship. That is the dedicated quarry park.
Yep.
It's not built yet, but you can get in there and see it's a big slab of bedrock with moss and trees, and it's quite beautiful. So it's a nature park. It was dedicated in 2016. It's just not fully publicly accessible yet.
Yeah.
But noting the future growth and development of this neighborhood, we might want to look at pickleball courts or basketball
Yep.
courts, a little bit more urban type recreation as well. And that's what we're wanting to see unfold as we continue the planning process.
Okay, so thanks Chair, in reference to that, then I'm glad that staff has identified other uses because we already have quite a nice view rock park called Burtnick Park, a half kilometer away. So I just think we need to be thoughtful when we plan new uses for children that don't have to cross either major road to go to the park. So I hope that staff keeps that in mind with those two parks, including maybe looking at the size of them to put some sort of playing area on it. It's larger than pickleball, although pickleball should be maybe also included. Let's cover all our bases. It's time that we maybe look at, based on our population growth, some more accessible, flat, usable, non-trail walking parkland. Thanks.
So I'd like to just pick up on that I assume we will, as part of this process, but part of whether it's an OCP or whatever process, hear back from staff sooner rather than later on a parks, on this. What are community amenities? To your point, do we want a Rocky Bluff? Do we want a pickleball court? What are the amenities that are important to the community? I hope that's something we'll see in the coming months and this is again a good test of all kinds of different things from provincial jurisdiction to what I just said. Councillor Rowe.
Yeah, I echo those thoughts around this development. My question is around the master development agreement. Wondering sort of where that is at, and happy to see that a requirement would be for us to see that before this reaches the end of its road at adoption. Is there any sort of timeline around that? Is my question.
Mr. Hall, Mr.
I mean, I think in terms of content, I mean, this is where the area planning piece will form a significant component of what will feed into the ultimate development agreement. So both of those pieces need to move forward. I mean, the agreement sort of exists right now, but in terms of the details of when and how much and all those kinds of pieces, you know, that would come out of this planning exercise still need to be done. So I can defer to Director Allen for more, but certainly the agreement and the planning piece, you know, go hand in hand moving forward as part of that OCP amendment of before we come back for adoption of any of these bylaws, or even before third reading. It's really getting those nailed down.
Anything to add? No? Okay. You okay?
Thanks. Yep. That's what I was wanting to hear.
I'm not seeing any hands at the moment. Can you explain, because Councillor Inkster referenced the traffic, and that's something that's I'm really aware of. How are people, we're getting more and more density in that part of the West Sechelt. So what's the master planning for people coming and going? You referenced past the high school. I mean, there's steep hills and tight corners and stuff that doesn't lend itself to the potentially huge growth in this part of the community. So is there a highway in our future?
I can say that there's a master transportation plan in our future, and staff have been working on that for the better part of the last year or two, and are working with our consultant to bring that to council in the earlier part of 2024. And so we look at Calvary Street as it comes up to Derby Road at present, the future extension of Barnacle, a little bit lower, halfway to the highway, being the two major roads through this area. And one of them, likely the Barnacle, being a little bit more geared towards active transportation as well as multi-use pathways here. At present, bus number 2 climbs the hill, goes past Chatleach High School, up Calgary to Derby over to Norris Bay Road. The transit future plan indicated that it would go both directions in the near to midterm, and so that'll open up increasing avenues there. So it's underway, and we'll be presenting the transportation plan to council in 2024.
Okay, because I think that's my question is, how do people leave the subdivisions and get to downtown, or for that matter, get to the ferry? And if they're all going down Cowrie and Barnacle, they're all coming into downtown. So if we want to get to the ferry, is that going to be the only real route?
I suppose it would depend on the destination. If one were off to Trail Bay Mall, they might come down to the neighborhood. If they know they're going to Gibson's or Langdale, they might go down Norris Bay Road to the highway.
Right. Please.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions. You know, eventually, what may happen with this development in that area is cars will start coming down Medusa. That's another way of getting into the downtown core, but then they come down the road that comes down. The work was done, trying to remember, Dolphin. They come down Dolphin eventually, because that's how they feed into the downtown core. So that's something we should consider going forward. In terms of this development, I hope that, I mean, I'm in favor of it. I think this is smarter development. This is where we need to go. We're not going to have as much pushback from those larger homeowners that we would have had 50 years ago, because we need housing and people know that. But I would also hope that staff planning is all over this project. Not to say all over the developer, but just all over the planning of this project, because of the numbers of homes that we're about to cluster into a small area, and it may set a model for what we do nearby. Because it's a fairly significant change in the area, but it's needed.
Okay, so I think that's not a question as much as encouragement. Yep, okay, Councillor Bell?
Through the chair, I guess for me, as we look at these plans and we continue to look forward, we've talked about active transportation.
Mhm.
And it's so critical that we do have this transit plan. As we look forward and we're doing, looking at these developments, how do we start to have those conversations about transit and BC Transit and with, I know that's an SCRD, but how does that link up in terms of planning?
Councillor Allen, do you wanna?
Mhm. Well, great question. I mean, BC Transit and the Sunshine Coast Regional District work together in terms of the operation, the funding and the future planning for transit, and they engage with local government partners, with the community. And we were able to provide comments on the transit future plan a year or two ago. I can't recall specifically when. That's when I picked up on noting that they planned a two-way bus for number 2 bus here, and we were very clear that we supported that, encouraged that, wanted that to happen as soon as possible, noting there's a high school along the way, as well as access to downtown, the Trellis Silverstone Care Facility and employees who might be coming and going via bus. And so we have certainly added our voice to that and done the best we can to encourage that. But planning, multi-agency planning is a big part of our job, and it's one of our biggest challenges, no question. Thank you.
Anything else, folks? Page 130, whoops, please, Councillor Rowe.
I was just gonna move recommendations 1 through 6 on page 131.
Okay, very good. And the seconder? All right, Councillor Toth.
Thank you. May I request that we vote on recommendation 5 separately? I'm fully in support of the townhomes and everything that's being looked at over on that other side. I'm not sure yet that I'm comfortable with where we're looking for at the cluster housing. Whether that's.
The cluster housing is the near Granite.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's 580-12.
Right.
Thanks.
Right. Okay, so we have a motion, but. Okay, do you want to speak to the motion first? Then we can, yeah, go ahead.
Toth?
Yeah,
Councillor
sure, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm in support of that. One of the things, I'm generally in support of the recommendations. It's, however, in particular, I'd strongly urge the developer as we go through the process to look at more density in the Granite Road part of the property. So I'm in support of Councillor Toth separating it out. Thanks.
Okay, so then we'll go back to procedure. I think I got the motion from Councillor Rowe and seconded by you. So you want to graciously agree to amend your motion to give to 1, 2, 3, and 4? To start with?
Sure.
And is that a friendly second? Okay. So the motion then is that we are voting on items on page 131, items 1, 2, 3, and 4. And also discussing them, should you wish, please.
Yeah, I'm not really clear where Councillor Toth is going. If in fact he wants to do it separately to vote against it, then that's not necessarily a friendly amendment.
No, that I didn't ask him.
Yeah, no, I
for a friendly
understand, but
amendment.
yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we'll come to that. So this is whether, if we could focus on items 1, 2, 3, and 4. Which I guess the substantive one is giving first reading to the bylaw 580-04, which is not Granite, that's Derby. My comment on that is, I see we have we're putting in maximum densities, but I mean, I guess we have to at this point, but we may get overruled or overridden by the province.
The small scale multi-unit housing would apply to the Granite Road property, and as noted.
Right, but this is Derby.
Right. The Derby being townhomes, the density is, I believe that this one is okay. It it's outside of the threshold of that the policy document because the parent parcel is larger. It's not presently zoned residential, it's presently zoned rural. There's a few little quirks. I believe that the density here is acceptable.
And yeah, to be fair, I'm kind of asking you to speculate, so that's
Mhm.
fine.
Yeah, whereas the granite one, as I mentioned earlier, the bylaw in front of you is actually provides more density than the site plan as shown in front of you.
Right, okay, but
Yeah.
we'll come to that in a
Right.
minute.
Sorry to
Yeah,
confuse.
okay, so any other discussion on 1, 2, 3, and 4? Ready for the question? All in favor? Carried. All right, Counselor Toth. No, you wanna,
Thank you. Let's see if my voice holds out here. I appreciate the attempts at looking at something smaller in form factor, duplexes, things like that. I don't think it goes far enough, to be perfectly honest. Townhomes, apartments, things like that, I think would be more, I think they're more needed. They're more what's needed in our community. And given that we don't yet know what the province is, how the implementation from the province is gonna look in terms of amendments to our zoning bylaws and all these other things that we're gonna have to update. I think it would be worth deferring this until we know what those changes from the province are gonna mandate. Rather than going down a road and then having to amend it and do another public hearing or whatever we have to do as we go down that process. So, and until we get a little further on the master planning for that area as well, I think it'd be prudent to defer it. That's my comment.
okay, that's your comment, okay. Counselor Inkster.
Not thinking that fast today, sorry. Yeah, my intention was, that we would defer this until work has gone further along the master planning for the area. We don't know what that timeline looks like. And until we get the specifics from the province about the changes that are being proposed for our zoning and what have you coming forward, which I think are imminent. Like, I think we're only talking about a delay of 2 or 3 months here. I don't think we're talking about 2 years down the road.
Right, okay, I'd contribute that this is about us giving first reading, which is an indication of our enthusiasm or lack thereof. So given its first reading and given I'm sure the developer and staff certainly are hearing the comments. Because I agree with the spirit. Hey, we need density, we need creative housing solutions, and that may be imposed on us in the next 2 or 3 months, but I'd be as happy to give the developer the confidence that we're with them. And we'd like him to do more. So I'd be supportive of first reading. Councillor Inkster.
Can I just ask, through you to Councillor Toth, if he's, can he pick a date? These defer for evers until staff, gets bold and brings them back to us, puts them in a tough spot, so, I just would like a date. And, the other thing is that I'm perfectly, as far as it stands here tonight with this particular individual developer, we're potentially approving 2 developments and we've approved 1. So I have no problem with a slight delay in the second one. I don't think it's sending the bad message because we're looking like we're approving the first one. So if they can build that fast and get approvals, that's award-winning building. But so I'm okay with that, but I'm looking for a date. Going in the black hole of deferments kind of scares me.
Thank you. And Councillor Inkster, you're absolutely right. And I think the mayor made a comment there that I think is relevant in that it shows our support for this proposal. And I think where I'm coming from is I don't support anything that involves the single family homes. So I would prefer to defer it to give time to see what the province comes down with. But if we're uncomfortable with deferring it until some unknown time, then the other option would be to defeat it and send it back. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other discussion? No, you're okay. No, go ahead.
My apologies, Counselor Toth, but I I don't support not giving this consideration. Tonight, what I heard staff say was that the master agreement needs to work in concert with the work we're doing here. And I want to believe that the developer has heard our comments and our concern around density. Not a big fan of more single family homes as well. However, I heard a lot of families lately, and that's what they're buying. So I also see a place for them, not necessarily 3,000 or 4,000 square feet with 5 bedrooms. Anyways, I'm getting off track, but yes, let's vote on it. That's what I was gonna say.
You're gonna make a motion.
Oh, I thought you,
No, no.
oh, okay. Oh, well, don't do that.
Order.
That's right. All right, I will make a motion that to move recommendation 5 and what about 6? 5 and 6 on
Okay,
page 131.
Okay, and that's seconded. Any further discussion? I think we've talked about in terms of 6, we've talked about our curiosity and looking for more details on the roads and parks. So staff can take that away. And there's nothing else. I'll call the question, which is on items 5 and 6 on page 131. All in favor? Opposed? Councilors Toth and Shepherd opposed. The motion carries. Okay, don't get to leave yet, do you, Mr. Hall? So we go to Tyson, no. Yes, three readings. Help me. There is it. Yes, but it's finding the pages. So it is, I believe, on page 146. Thank you. Okay, so 143, bylaw number 492-32. And this is before us for first reading. Saw that or heard that, sorry, and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of first reading? Carried. And then CP amendment bylaw. Yes, 140. Okay, so this is page 146, bylaw number 580-04-2023. For first reading, moved, seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Done? No, I'm not done. Yes, which is bylaw 580-12, 2023. Everybody okay with that? Motion seconded. All in favor of first reading? Opposed, Counselor Toth and Shepherd are opposed. The motion carries. Yeah, I'm done. Am I done? I'm not done. I'm done. Okay, is that right? Did I miss anything? Great. Very good. Thank you, council. Thank you, staff. That's keep you busy, a little busy next year. We move then to Tyson Road for the agritourism accommodation, and this is page 154. Council before us for first and second reading and to organize a public hearing. Maybe questions first? Is there anything, I'm sorry, I should have asked, is there any comments from staff? Yeah, no, I saw, yeah. Any, no, you're, okay. Counselor Shepherd.
Just so I understand it clearly, sorry, through the
Yeah,
chair.
please.
This is the 10 units being requested fall in line within the provincial guidelines of what's permitted? Is that?
Permitted under the ALC? Yeah, or the ALR?
Yes, so the provincial ALR regulations allow up to 10 sleeping units. That doesn't trigger a non-farm use application, so it's just the regulations allow it by default. Local governments are allowed to regulate or prohibit that particular use. So in our case, we allowed a lesser number. Hence the rezoning is required to go back, but they're staying within the provincial limits. So it's only an approval from us that's required.
Yeah, so they're staying within the provincial limits for agricultural land reserve.
Yes.
Right.
Sorry, a follow-up question. As a district, do we have any separate policy on limitation on the number or preferred number of units as a cap
On that zoning.
No, the current OCP policies don't set out a particular cap. It's more supportive of the use, balanced against, supporting agricultural use as the primary use, but there's no specific cap specified in the OCP.
Okay. Counselor Bell?
To the chair, so around public hearing, is staff calling a public hearing? Is that the recommendation in this case?
Yes, the part of the staff report and part of the process so far to see how long that survives the.
I'm just curious, because we've talked about public hearings before in terms of why we have decided or why you think we should do a public hearing for this particular project.
Please.
I mean, at the moment, by having the public hearing, I mean, it allows us to do first and second reading. Now, the current provincial legislation, if council were to decide not to hold a public hearing, means we have to go to council first to get that resolution before coming back at a second meeting to give the bylaw readings. And it was felt that right now, it's easier to go to council now, get first and second reading, get the public hearing scheduled for the new year and move it forward. But you're correct, for OCP compliant rezonings, there is an option to not hold a public hearing, and we expect as part of all the provincial changes coming next year, there will be further changes to public hearing requirements that will make it even easier to not hold a public hearing. And in fact, that I think they're going as far as prohibiting a local government from holding a public hearing for an application that is compliant with the OCP. But right now, we still have to post notice. Council has to make a resolution, and that is an extra step in advance of giving a bylaw readings. So we just decided to do the normal route.
Thank you.
Don't want to fight City Hall. Yes, Councillor Inkster.
It's just, I have a little bit of a problem with the word easier with moving past the public hearing process. Pretty key democratic process that we may need to utilize. I just wanted to ask with the particular dwellings that is being proposed here, is the, what, are they off the ground? I'm just not clear. I'm looking for it. And if, and what is the base? There's no foundations in any case, any of these examples being constructed? At all?
For the geodesic domes, I mean, this will be one item that we need to work more with the building department to determine if building permits are required for these structures or if they're exempt from those requirements. That'll determine if there's additional work that needs to be done. But right now, they're more than a tent and less than a building.
Yeah,
So you got that. They're a dome?
Yeah.
Whether they sit on a slab or something, I don't know.
Okay, I wasn't concerned about building requirements because of course, we're going to be all over that with that because we have some responsibility. My concern was the capping of ALR land with any cement, et cetera, concrete. That's what I'm concerned about because it renders the land almost unusable going forward. So for growing, so I just had that question. I'm assuming that it's not. I just wanted to clarify. Thanks.
I guess at this point, that's something that'll come. Is that fair?
Yeah, we can certainly follow up on that. On one hand, because the ALR regulations allow up to 10 units and there's no limit in terms of, you know, those 10 units could be 10 tent sites, they could be 10 RV sites or a combination of those. It includes bedrooms in a home. It includes detached cabin units. So the regulations don't necessarily specify that it can't be on a foundation if it's a structure. Certainly that's something that we can look into if there's a concern about if you know, somebody was proposing 10
Great.
cabins, but for now, that's something we can look into.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. There's actually an example of geodesic domes up at the Coast Gravity Park. And they're built on, 2-foot raised wooden platforms. It actually works quite well, looks quite good. If something changes in the future, they can be disassembled and relocated. I really have no problems with the geodesic domes. In rereading this, I am more comfortable with it than I was at the start of the evening. I was worried about the loss of farm use of the land and things like that, as Councillor Inkster mentioned, especially for, concrete pads, things like that. But with 7 of these being proposed to be seasonal, I can't imagine it would be practical to pour concrete pads under where you're going to set up seasonal tents. But yeah, just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Please, Councillor Bell. When I see the term short-term rentals these days, I wonder how is this going to comply with our bylaws around short-term rentals and the potential imposition of the provincial bylaws?
Thought-provoking question. I would dive into the difference between short-term rental and agritourism to start. And I'd also note that the property owners will be living on site in this regard. So separate set of regulations because it's through agritourism and the ag zone rather than a residential short-term rental in the R1 and 2 zones.
Okay, I would have liked to have seen the use agritourism then as opposed to STR, but
Did I misanswer?
please.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is a difference between agritourism accommodation and short-term rental, and I think the zoning bylaw focuses on agritourism accommodation, where you may have seen the reference to short-term rental being around the business license aspect. Given that, noting for council that, this agritourism accommodation use would still require a business license and would more likely fit within the short-term rental business license. But otherwise, from a zoning perspective, the land use is agritourism accommodation that's defined under the provincial regulations.
So the zoning will be under the provincial regulations. Thank you. Do they have a well?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. Okay, anything else, council? Please, yes,
Prepared to make a motion if we're ready?
yes.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we will, motion to accept recommendations 1 and 2.
Okay, seconded several times, so I will call the question, well, anything else? All in favor? Carried. So then we go to bylaws, which are on page 231. Is that the first one? Yes, it is the one. And this is before us for 2 readings. Suit your pleasure. Motion for first reading and seconded, all in favor? Carried, sorry. Carried, yeah, carried. And second reading. Motion seconded, all in favor of second reading? Opposed, carried. And then we authorize, well, we've done this, so we've authorized you to carry on with your arranging a public hearing. Woo-hoo. Great. That brings us to the end of that matter. So, council, we go to item 7.1 on page 232, which is the meeting of council of December 6th. Any, anything, folks? Are you with us? Any problems? Oh, well, if you'll indulge me, it's more like matters arising, but at the bottom of page 236, right at the bottom bullet point, are we any closer to understanding the riparian area on that property? Yes, it probably hasn't been enough time. This is the Reef Road project. Oh, I'll withdraw the question. Put that on TV somewhere. And the other one, though, I would like an amendment on page 240. Top, in response to an inquiry by council, staff noted that development cost charges apply to industrial properties. The question was whether other properties, whether this property would pay DCCs, and if the Seashell Inlet Crescent properties had paid. The answer to the first was yes, and the answer to the second one was no, due to I believe no, due to an oversight. So I would like that amendment in the minutes, please. And anything else? Honor of my friends on the Canadian Aquaculture Association, if you could go to page 245, just above item 11. Says Canadian Agriculture. Their button does say aquaculture is agriculture, so. There you go. Anyways, if you could amend that, please, to aquaculture. Thank you, Mr. Hall. So, any other comments or amendments? Not a motion to adopt as amended, seconded. Well, this, since I got it for 7.1, we'll do that. We'll do that. All in favor of 7.1? Nope, that's not 7.1. 7.2, so we'll do all in favor of 7.2 as amended. And then, yes, if you wish, we can do 7.1, 3, and 4. work for you? Yep. Okay. Yep, okay. For adoption of 7.1 and receipt of 7, 3, and 4. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we then go to 10.1. We're almost there, folks. The SCRD directors reports. Who's gonna take this one? Inkster? Mr. Toth?
Meetings last week, a couple of long meetings. There was quite a substantive discussion on a neighboring water system and the costs associated with providing treatment to those systems outside the Chapman system. But it speaks to an overall cost to providing treatment to systems throughout the Sunshine Coast. And the figures, if asked for by Councilor Toth and myself, can provide them, but it's outside our system. But it just, as I said, speaks to the expense of providing treatment and providing the infrastructure to bring the water to the homes in those areas. There was some good discussion and info regarding a community hall in a neighboring area and what will be the end result of that hall and the end use. We'll see what happens, but I think it's good if it stays. It's just a community asset. And there was some budget discussion continuing about, brought up at the meeting about one-time items and a number of the issues that directors had concerns over about how it moves forward and triggers the higher tax rates. And so staff had indicated that they were, I think, I'm assuming without our request or encouragement, gone back to have a discussion over a number of items, whether they're projects with multi-year pieces to them that have to be started and or whether they're needed projects. So some are emergency items, much like the District of Sechelt State, things that we need to do, and some can perhaps be delayed in order to spend that money on, sadly, in future, but not necessarily in this tax year. The two issues that the mayor brought forward, I think that's been dealt with, but I think January 25th is a meeting that should be kept in mind regarding discussion of well use and wells. There'll be quite a large presentation on those issues. And I think that was a substantive question you had because you had indicated that the other one wasn't as important in discussion. So I'll throw it over to Councillor Toth.
Thanks. Yeah, end of January 25th, which is the next phase of the well exploration, which is those 5 wells in the west of Sechelt area. As directors, we're not sure where that project is at yet. So we're also looking forward to this update. Helps to, diversify to get some more sources down this end of the coast. Yeah, there was that question about the SCRD using $100,000 from surface water explorations to do the technical analysis of the reservoir, which is work that staff didn't have room for in the work plan. And that funding was intended for long-term surface water supply considerations, including things like Clahome, Saginaw, connecting to the Pender water systems, et cetera. Didn't have anything to do with the wells for that source of funding. And it's something that staff would be bringing forward a proposal to replenish those funds in the 2025 budget year. The only other thing I wanted to add was that the number of bylaws that we had to pass before the end of the year, it was great that we could do 3 readings in one motion. I did vote against the water rates an amendment bylaw for 2024. It's not that I don't think saving for the future is a good idea. I know that we're not saving enough for the capital asset renewal and things like that. But we're still lacking comprehensive asset management plans for the water system. And until we can get some of those plans in place, I'm concerned with the affordability for our residents moving forward. And so the rate that I would have preferred to have seen would still see reserves increase, just not as much as they're going to under this plan. So that's all. It's still moving forward. I think I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Don't mean to put either of you on the spot, but there was an announcement I learned about today about curtailing developments because, do you have any insights that you can offer us?
An announcement?
Related? A letter I believe came from the SRD and was circulated through us to developers about water restriction, water infrastructure.
Fire flow
and flows,
implications.
yes, yeah.
I do want to, I saw that letter. That's news to me. I don't know about
Okay.
Councilor Inkster. I know that staff have been working on doing an update to the water modeling. And to be clear, this isn't anything to do with fire flows, to do with drought or sufficient water supply. It's everything to do with size of the pipes in the ground and where we're building and where the density is occurring. So, I don't, yeah, I saw that late in the day. I didn't have a chance to ask SCRD staff anything about it. I don't know if Councilor Inkster has anything.
No, that's fine, thanks. I wasn't sure if it was something that had come to you before, so. Okay, great. Councilor reports. Who hasn't gone first lately? You haven't gone first. Okay.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to report other than Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everybody. I'm getting over this stupid cold and yeah, I'm looking forward to some rest and recovery. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Then we'll do what I've done. Councilor Bell?
Councillor Bell?
Yes.
me? Okay,
yes,
good.
That's you.
That's me. Okay, good. Okay, yes, so thank
Yeah,
you. Very
yeah,
good. The usual Cover the Coast Housing Action Team meeting. From that was a report on the provincial initiatives as well as some of the federal initiatives coming down from Kelly Foyer. And I furthered that with a Zoom meeting with MP Patrick Weiler, who was able to talk of some more of the federal initiatives. They continue to come out as the federal economic statement is coming out. But I'm seeing more funding coming through, more funding announcements in the silly season, as they call it, for the feds as they close for 6 weeks. Not quite, but at least as they close for a number of weeks. So lots of happening, but there'll be a lot more funding, I suspect, coming down. I attended the CIA Reconciliation Committee celebration, the volunteer celebration. Just want to send a shout out to the amazing work they do. CIA Days, the children coming together to install 651 of the Every Child Matter hearts on the fences. And I just want to say something, one of the quotes, they say, reconciliation happens where they gather. And they provide us so many beautiful opportunities to do that. So thank you to them. I attended the community schools, the Sunshine Coast Youth Action and Awareness Committee meeting. That includes some of the community schools and so there was some SCRD, some of the wellness people there. And they just spoke of some of their challenges, some of the work they're doing. They serve a lot of youth, seeing very similar challenges that we are, but they're doing some great work and I hope that they continue to get further funding to do the work they're doing. And finally, poverty reduction through the work of Chris Herkensheimer. God, I hope I said his name right. But he's Thriving Communities Committee and he's doing a lot of work around anti-poverty. Incredible work, actually. He's so bright and so well-versed and has a lot of data on this. And you will see many more events coming up around anti-poverty reduction in the communities, and there'll be more on that next year. I did a little speech or just a little intro, a welcome, and it was really just an opportunity for me to talk about the work that the District of Sechelt has done around anti-poverty. So it was, yeah, it was a great opportunity to do that. And I also say the same thing, the very best to the community, be safe and have fun. And may I wish you lots of joy.
Great. Thank you. Councilor Shepherd. I think the two items that I can recall are airport committee, a very enthusiastic group of people have, as this council knows, have fed in their priorities to the consultant who's drafting the master plan.
But there will also be submitting the BCAP funding for looking for funds from the federal government to establish landing by GPS. So we're hoping that application goes in with the next day or two, and really hoping that funding comes through. And then SCREDO, the Economic Development Agency, monthly meeting this week. They are finishing the last details of their 2024 work plan, which they're anxious to come to council and present. So looking forward to that, along with the financials for the I think it's 2021 that we're missing in the past year. So I think they've got a complete set of documents. They're really formulating their strategy for going forward. So looking forward to that in January. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Inkster.
Thank you. Also at that poverty discussion at the Seaside Center with a number of members of the community, I think Councillor Bell did a good job introducing the topic, and it was a little bit longer than I thought it would be, but it was good and comprehensive. And if the mayor wants an introduction, he should ask Councillor Bell to do that. She did a good job of introducing the topic and talking about how the district is concerned on the issue, and that we're serious about looking for solutions within our community. So that's really key to those points. Staff party was last weekend. Well done. Just thank you to the staff that organized it. I'm assuming it's a wellness committee here. And there's a number of people that were involved in that. A lot of prizes. Wow. But council wasn't in on it. That was a little sad, but anyway, food was good. It was a good event, and good music. So well done to the staff members that were involved. Some of them are here. Well done to you. Yeah. And community forest meeting, and I think it was just after last council meeting. It was good to see that a number of council members are going to talk to them. And I also wanted to mention, before I say my finals here, I got a card from the Premier, Office of the Premier, Mayor Darren Inkster. From the Premier. It's interesting. Yeah, I know.
It's really up to date.
Yeah, it's they got it all under control from Premier Eby, but I just wanted to mention that it was helicopter tour of Victoria and a few days at the Empress for Mayor Darren Inkster. So I need to change my plans over the Christmas break.
For two?
Well, yes, it's a big room and it's a big helicopter, so I just wanted to let everyone know that. And just wanted to end by well wishes to all that are here and the community listening in, and have a safe Christmas break while we break and rest and recoup, and I'll be in Victoria. Thank you.
There you go, Councillor
I can't
Rowe.
follow that. I should just say nothing. I was sorry to miss the Christmas party. I'll party twice as hard next year. I finished working at the hospital and had a get lost party that night. I was mandated to attend. What was I gonna? Oh, Councillor Bell and I went to see a film last week called Awaken, which was locally made with Echo and Terry Alec and Barb Higgins and members of not just Seashell Nation. It was really well done, and they had a Q&A after, which was fascinating as well. So that was great. Non-council business, but I just wanted to put a shout out there. I organized a 911 hockey game. It's something I've wanted to do for 26 years, and I finally got around to doing it. And so VCH doctors, including like the old guys, the Petzolds and the Berensteins of the world, as well as the new guys and hospital staff, took on the RCMP and the Seashell Fire Department. And I was worried about whether, it would be attended, and 135 people came. And so it was a great night. And as I said to them, we all do really tough work in the first responder kind of role. And it's been a really tough couple of weeks. There's stuff going on, obviously get canned if we talk about it, but this community needs to know that there's some it's tough go out there on the front lines, no matter where you're working. I know the fire department has had some really tough fires lately to fight, and we've had some really tragic things come through our door. So the reason I say that is just to, especially during this holiday, just take a hot minute to think about the people that are still working and protecting us over the holidays. And so I feel like anytime we can do these sort of events that bring people out of the work that they do to do things together and camaraderie, it's a win. So that was a great event and actually ended up being a fundraiser. So we will split the money to a charity of the fire department's choice, and the family that Councillor Bell has had a GoFundMe account going for will get half of the profit if I ever get all the bills paid. Anyways, and then on another non-topic, I know it's late, but we were talking about the film thing earlier. I was reflecting on the sort of the economic impact of these sort of things that we don't necessarily see. And as some of you know, we had an alumni game on December 2nd, and we're still, paying the bills and all that. And I looked at it through a lens that I don't usually look at those things through, and it was how much money we didn't make and how much money we paid to hotels, restaurants, printers, sign makers, gift shops like you name it. And it's upwards for, I know, granted, that's a big event, but it's probably somewhere between 30 and 40,000 bucks. So these things that we can bring to our community really do have an impact. And then today we had our pre-Christmas community safety meeting and talked about plans for the new year, and doing some community engagement and education, and some visioning work around our outcomes and what we want to measure and all that sort of good stuff. And we'll be doing that in January. So that's it and Merry Christmas, obviously.
Obviously. Okay. Okay, a couple of sad things. Of course, many of us attended Bev Shaw's celebration of life. I think we've got to be aware, and I encourage everybody, this is a tough time of the year, as you said, Councillor Rowe, and I know I discovered another friend with a very grave illness just a few days ago. Anyways, the fire department told me the fire on Marmot this afternoon was responded to very quickly, including by a member of the Community Safety Committee who suddenly got a ring on his phone and said, "I'm out of here." But that's 4 fires in 1 month. So I think by way of reminder to, hopefully there's lots of people still watching on YouTube, just be extra careful at this time of the year. Shout out to the 3 members of the Shishal, our friends and neighbors who have stepped forward for the by-election. And so that, I believe the election date is early February. And I had the honor of chatting with 3 elders a week or so ago about the future that they see for the community. And that was quite a treat to do so, sitting in Daily Roast. And I think the only other thing is just to be really appreciative of what we have and all the hard work that so many people in the community do. I did have the pleasure of going to a couple of social functions, and just struck by the people that were there that, this was a big deal to get a night off between the typically husbands and wives and their kids. One of them was always at work, it seemed. So they all had a night off in one case. So that was extra special. So without further ado, take the rest of the night off, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Now, Merry Christmas, everyone, and here's to a healthy and prosperous 2024. Yeah. Great. So I'll take a motion to adjourn willingly. And I'll take that as a vote. All right. We are adjourned. Any questions? I don't have Zoom running, so if anybody's on the Zoom. If anybody is, nope. Oh, yes,